If you're anything like me and haven't exactly been thrilled with the current selection of wireless lav kits, then you're about to get really excited. Let's get undone. Gerald Undone. He's crazy. What is happening, everybody? I'm Gerald Undone, and today we're going to be looking at the Deity Connect, a 2.4 gigahertz wireless audio system from Deity. A couple notes. First of all, the sound you're hearing right now is coming from this lav here, which is one of the included mics. Which, as you've probably noticed, doesn't sound that great. So story time. I made that video just over 2 months ago when the Deity Connect was still in pre-production, and I was more so trying to cover the awesome functionality of the wireless unit than I was the microphone quality. However, two things happened when I uploaded that video. Many of you who saw it found the audio quality distracting from what makes the Deity Connect great. And two, it turned out Deity didn't actually want me to upload my video on the pre-production model back then, and instead just wanted my feedback so they could use it for their final retail release. So I took that video down, and then I intended on making a whole new video later on at this time. But I was worried that that would come across as a little bit sneaky, as if I was trying to pretend that that first mic never existed, because many of you had heard it when you watched that original video, even though I wasn't supposed to upload it. But I decided instead to keep that old video and show you it and mention it, because it allows us to focus on how awesome it is that in less than 2 months, Deity not only made new microphones, but improved the functionality of the wireless, added a whole new feature, and lowered the noise floor, and of course, shipped me their final retail version to make this updated review. That level of care, combined with the fact that this system is firmware upgradable, makes me even more comfortable recommending the Deity Connect, especially now that it sounds so much better. Because you've been listening to the updated lav this entire time. Now please excuse the fact that my voice does sound a little bit more harsh than normal. I just got back from NAB and have been yelling for the last 4 days. Alright, so let's jump back to 2 months ago again and see what else this bozo has to say, but we'll use the audio from my hypercardioid mic instead of the old lavs so that we're not distracted by the audio quality. Keep in mind though that my studio mic that we're going to hear in this recording does sound better than even this new updated lav, or pretty much any lav for that matter, and that's to be expected. And I'll interject occasionally to let you know about the other updates to the system. Okay, so let's start off with the receiver, the Deity Duo RX. And first of all, I just love the design here. The shape and colors are pleasing, which are nicely accented by the color of the display. And it has a really nice weight and feel, and the outer shell is aluminum, so it seems really durable. On the bottom, you'll find a 1/4-20 thread and a 3/8 thread, and there's also a Velcro band that can go in this place if you want to attach it to a sound bag or to a tripod leg. And this brings us to the first of many thoughtful included accessories, the 1/4-20 to shoe adapter. Now these things are extremely useful in general, but in this case, you would screw it to the bottom of the receiver, and then you can mount your receiver into the hot shoe of your camera. On this side of the device, there's a USB-C charger, which you would mostly use for charging because all of these devices have internal rechargeable batteries, so no more AA's. It takes about an hour to charge, and then it'll last you about 10 hours. And the kit includes a USB Type-A to Type-C charging cable. That cable is now black, and now there's 2 of them. You can also use the USB-C port for firmware updates because of another thoughtful accessory, the USB Type-A to Type-C, which is included, which then lets you download the firmware and put it on a flash drive, and then you would just put the flash drive into the adapter and then into your receiver or transmitter via the USB-C port, and then you just run the update using the interface, and it's really easy and intuitive, and I thought this was a really novel and smart way to go about it. You can also use the Type-C port to link 2 receivers together with the included Type-C to Type-C cable, which allows you to link the 2 receivers up so you can connect up to 4 transmitters in a unified system. On the opposite side, we have LED indicators for power and mute, as well as sync confirmation for both of the transmitters. Then you have the antennas. These are the 2 adjustable ones that it comes with, but they're interchangeable, so if the situation calls for it, you can connect much larger antennas if you need them. Also, if you're only planning on using 1 transmitter, you can actually take one of these antennas off of here and attach it to that transmitter and leave one on the receiver, and that'll give you a stronger connection over the smaller antenna that normally comes on the transmitter. There's 4 buttons on the face, which make the menus incredibly easy and intuitive to navigate. You've got the up and down arrows, and then select and back buttons. And the back button doubles as the power button when held, and the select button is also the menu button when the menu isn't up. And this interface shows just how feature-rich this system is. First off, you've got the home screen, which shows which transmitters are connected, their signal strength, their audio status, and their battery life, as well as the battery life of the receiver in the middle. It even shows the audio levels being picked up by each mic. Those VUs were made more sensitive in the latest version because one of the complaints was that they didn't seem to move enough during regular dialogue. They could still possibly benefit from more tuning, but they're definitely a lot more effective now. This has to go in the record books as one of the most useful layouts on a 1-inch screen I've ever seen. Everything crucial you need to know is there in a glance. You can also control if you want the screen to stay on all the time or if you want it to turn off after a while to save battery. And those choices range from 5 seconds up to 10 minutes with 6 options in between, and of course never to leave it always on. Above that you have the deeper options for managing each transmitter, and these will actually override the settings on the transmitter so you don't have to approach the Talon or fish through your pockets to change the settings. You can do it all right from here. And then you also have the receiver options, which include the output settings, the pair trigger, and that firmware update command I was telling you about earlier. You don't actually need to pair the transmitters by going into the menu though, they pair automatically, and they're quite quick, usually within 5 seconds of turning the transmitter on, they're paired. That pair option is obviously good to have though. That way if something is preventing the automatic pairing, you can go in and manually override it, just like you would with a Bluetooth connection. And when you first get the device, you'll probably have to manually pair it just to get it all set up so that the automation process can work. Now to elaborate a little bit on those output settings that I mentioned in the receiver menu, this is another feature that I was really impressed by. So on this side of the receiver, we have two 3.5mm output jacks that are labeled A and B, and you can configure them however you want. You can run a mono signal line for line so that one mic will come out mono from jack A and the other mic will come out mono from jack B, which you can do with either a 3.5mm cable or with another awesome included accessory, the 3.5mm to XLR cable, which will give you dual balanced outputs for each mic. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. I have it connected this way from the 3.5 to the XLR adapter running right into my audio interface. And all of the jacks use the locking thread type and they're very secure. But if you want to run to a camera, you can also do a stereo mix out of just one of the outputs and then just use a standard 3.5mm cable, one of which they've also included, by the way. They have a coiled 3.5 to 3.5mm, and this makes sense because likely your camera only has the one mic in. And you can substitute a longer cable if you want, but what's great about it is that the Deity will separate the channels so that one mic will be on the left and one mic will be on the right, so that later on in post, if you want, you can separate those channels out and mix them differently. And it gets even better because that extra output that's now free can be used as a headphone jack, and this is extremely useful if you're using a camera that doesn't have one, because now you do. And you can also control the gain of the outputs independently, which is nice if you want to try and get a good mix from the start. But if you're using the headphone method, you can also use this to adjust the headphone volume separately, and turning this up will give you enough juice to power even 60 to 70 ohm headphones. Yeah, this guy's videos are actually pretty good. Probably deserves more subscribers. Am I right? He's crazy. Alright, now let's talk about the transmitters. So you might have noticed that we didn't set the UHF frequency, and that's because this system is using a 2.4 GHz band. Now this has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that you can take this anywhere in the world and you don't have to worry about violating some radio law in that region like you do with the UHF competitors. But the disadvantage is that 2.4 GHz range is usually pretty crowded. But Deity found a way to completely remove that disadvantage by using adaptive frequency hopping and listen before talk. So rather than stay on a specific frequency and wait for interference to happen, the Deity is constantly hopping, something like 600 times per second, and consistently avoids interference. But it also has a failsafe which checks for interference, and if you say something while interference is detected, it'll take that audio and move it to the next hop and capture it there rather than on the bad frequency, basically creating a seamless recording as if the interference never happened. This is genius, and I can personally say that I haven't had a single issue with RF interference while using this device. The RF output can also be controlled. The lowest power setting is 10 milliwatts, but it can go all the way up to 100 milliwatts, and there's also an auto option, which is great for preserving battery life because it will only use as much power as needed to keep a good connection. But to give you an idea, at full power, this system is over 3 times stronger than the Sennheisers and over 10 times stronger than the Rode Link. I did an open air range test and I was able to get over 150 meters away before I noticed any issues, and that was using the small antenna on the transmitter. 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. So this is about 50 meters away, give or take. I'm doing it based on pacing. I have the receiver set to the lowest power, which is 10 milliwatts, and as far as I can tell, the audio is still good to go. Okay, so we first started to experience a bit of the problems here around 100 to 120 meters away, and that was still at the lowest power. Okay, so now I've set it to maximum power, 100 milliwatts, and I'm gonna go as far as I can before it starts to cut out. 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. Okay, so here I am now. This would be probably close to 200 meters. I'm probably 170, 180 meters away. So I'll just go down to the edge of the street and call it a good 200 meters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 8, 59, 60. Over 200 meters away. I'm not sure if you can even really see me in the lens anymore. The transmitters have a similar design to the receivers, aluminum exterior, nice weight, compact, and they have a nicely shaped and strong metal belt clip. They also have LED indicators for pair, power, and mute, and they have the interchangeable antenna like I was talking about earlier, and then a 3.5mm locking thread for the mic input. The controls are the same on the transmitter as the receiver as well, so again, intuitive and consistent. You have a similar display for presenting the pertinent information, but in this case it's only relative to the transmitter, and again you also have an option in the menu to decide how long you want the display to stay on. The retail version now also features a button hold unlock function so that your transmitter doesn't get muted or have its settings changed when your Talon is moving around. This is a great add-on, and it's activated by pressing both of the arrow buttons at the same time. So this is the transmitter I'm actually using, and as you can see, no matter what I press, it doesn't actually do anything. But if I press and hold these two buttons at the same time, then eventually the screen will come on, and then we can change the settings. So this is great. It means you're not going to have to worry about something funky happening to your transmitter. In the menu, you have an option for setting a mute hotkey, which when enabled will allow you to mute the transmitter just by pressing the back button when on the home screen. You also have the firmware update function because the firmware also needs to be updated on the transmitters, and that's done the same way via the USB-C, which is also used for charging, just like on the receiver. You can also adjust the mic level down to -12 dB and all the way up to +21 dB, which is a fantastic range. And there's also a mic limiter and a low cut filter for 75 Hz and 150 Hz, which is great for preventing some unwanted lower frequencies in your recording. So a couple things. First, the limiter is actually an analog limiter, which is a fantastic decision and it'll give you much better results when managing spicy vocals. And one of the issues with the old kit was that there was quite a bit of distortion that crept in when you increased the gain on the transmitter. And I think this is probably what caused some of the problems with the reduced audio quality, because when it comes to gain staging, one of the things that you want to try and do is load the gain up as early in the chain as possible. That way you can activate and fully juice the microphone and use all of its sensitivity. But we had to keep the gain lower on the transmitter and then just boost the signal later on in the chain, which meant that we were just taking an already somewhat weak microphone signal and then just turning it up. And so it didn't really sound very good. But now I have the transmitter turned way up and then only boosting it a little bit in my recorder, and I think it sounds so much better. Lastly, another great feature is the frequency boost function, which allows you to add up to 10 dB to all the frequencies between 7 kHz and 20 kHz. This is a really smart function that allows you to overcome much of the muffle that's created when you hide lav mics under clothes or in fabrics, and also helps to preserve a lot of the vocal range that would otherwise be suppressed. Test 1 2 3 4 5. Test 1 2 3 4 5. And again, all of these functions can be implemented from the receiver as well without ever needing to touch the transmitter. And when you combine all of these audio control settings, it really lets you accomplish a great deal on location without needing to rely on fixing everything in post. You can get a well-mixed, well-controlled recording just by tweaking settings on the receiver, and those efficiencies will be worth money when you factor in time-saved editing. So I think that's it for everything that comes in the box. Well, except the box itself, which is actually a really nice Pelican-style case. You got egg crate foam, well-fit cutouts, and quality latches. It's a really terrific little value add to keep your kit organized and safe. I appreciated this. So the last piece would just be the microphones. Here I'm about to complain that the foam windscreens came off way too easily on the old mics, and they definitely did, but I'm happy to say that is no longer an issue on the new mics. I also go on to give you some audio comparisons which are no longer relevant because the mics have been completely upgraded in the system. So instead, let's just give you some room tone with no noise reduction so you can see how clean this system is. However, if you prefer the sound profile of another microphone, you can easily change out the mics of this kit as long as they follow the 3.5mm standard, because this system is really all about the amazing capabilities of the wireless. You could even use an on-camera shotgun mic as a wireless boom if you wanted, or mix and match a shotgun with a lav. You've got plenty of options with the two transmitters. The only other con that I can think of is maybe the latency. It's at 19 milliseconds, which is a bit higher than some of the competition, but even if you record directly into the camera, it still seems perfectly in sync, and there's no noticeable lip lag to my eye. And if you record externally, you're going to be syncing in post anyway, so this spec is kind of irrelevant. Okay, so that's it for the hardware. Now let's talk about value. Everything about this kit to me feels like premium professional. And when we're talking that price category, we're usually at like $1,300 to $1,800 US. And that's usually for a single connection. If you want a dual kit, you're probably like $2,300 to $2,700 and up. But this kit from Deity, I'm told, is going to be priced at $650 US, which is crazy to me. If we compare that to the Sennheiser G4s, which are probably the standard for a reasonably affordable wireless kit, this is a no-brainer. Those Sennheisers are $600 and you only get one transmitter and mic. I never really loved the value proposition of those Sennheisers, but there just wasn't really any other great options without spending $2,000. I never liked the battery door, the fact that it was UHF and there were restrictions on where you could use it. I didn't like the mic that it came with, and the list goes on. But what else was I going to do because I didn't have the budget perfect for a $2,500 kit. And if we step down a notch and compare it to the Rode Link, which depending on the kit you choose costs somewhere between $400 and $450, again, you only have one transmitter and one mic, and you're missing out on so many features that the Deity has. So in the case of the $50 difference between the Deity and the Sennheisers, it's easy. Spend the extra $50 on the Deity, you're going to get a whole other mic and transmitter, a much better interface, a higher level of polish, and much more useful audio controls. But if $650 is out of your price range, I completely understand, but I would seriously consider maybe saving a little bit longer rather than going and buying a $300 to $400 solo system from Rode or the like. I think that you'll be happy you did. And if you're looking at one of those super premium systems that we were talking about, I would highly suggest maybe taking a look at the Deity first, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how close it can get you to a $2,500 system, and then you can use that extra budget on mics or a better recorder or craft services. So obviously, since filming this, Rode has announced their new Wireless Go system, which does provide another interesting option in this space. Now, I haven't actually gotten a chance to test that system yet, so I don't have much to offer other than I don't believe it to be in the same professional category as the Deity or some of the other systems that we were talking about. I think it's more intended for like a run and gun style setup, and I believe it's priced accordingly for that. Anyway, that's it. Overall, I think the Deity Connect offers the best value in the wireless lav category, and I'm kind of glad that my review worked out this way. Making my first video and finding issues and then sending them to Deity and have them be listened to and fixed quickly and satisfyingly makes it so easy to recommend this system. Because I actually thought the system was really great before and it just needed a few tweaks. But now we know that we're dealing with a company that will listen to our feedback and take care of our investment long after the purchase is complete. This guy's videos are actually pretty good. I kind of regret calling him a bozo earlier on. Kind of... Am I right? What am I doing right now? Why am I talking to a tablet that's not even on? Oh god. But that's going to be it for me. I hope you found this video helpful or at least entertaining. And if you did, make sure you leave it the old thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. But if you did not find this video helpful or entertaining, feel free to hit the dislike button twice. Alright. I'm done.